Hey everyone, my name is Katie Robertson. I'm the founder and director for the Anchor Gathering, and this is the Anchor Moment, and I want to tell you a little bit about what that is. It's a time we get to hear from a guest a little bit about their life, their faith journey, and an anchor moment. And that is a time that someone has had their faith grounded and they've seen Jesus for real in their lives. So we are so excited at this time you get to hear firsthand a personal story from one of our guests, and we hope that you'll be encouraged.
Hi, my name is Tami Bresolin. I've lived in Redmond for over 30 years and been married to my husband for 39 years this March. I'm kind of a local person, lived here pretty much my entire life. Local schools, churches, met my husband on the east side, got married on the east side. We've always lived over here. And the Lord blessed us about 34 years ago with two children who are both now adults. They've both been brought up in a Christian home and accepted the Lord as children. I myself accepted the Lord as a really young child. My mom brought me to faith, she always says, when I was 2 years old, and grew up in the church, in Bible studies, youth groups, child evangelism, Young Life, the Good News Club. Always been involved in church. I can't imagine my life without church and Sunday school, and especially women. Even when I was a teenager, I was always in Young Life Bible studies and things, and just always having women around to pray with and share life with, cry with, laugh with. I just can't imagine life without that. And more than that, without God. There have been so many times in my life, storms that have come up, some big, some little, some raging. And I've always had that anchor of my faith and of God, and knowing that no matter what, He was with me. And more often than not, saved me, took me out of it, brought me into the next segment of life and the next storm that was going to hit. The big storm that I'd like to share, my big anchor moment in life, happened about 16 years ago. My daughter was a senior in high school and had struggled several years with an undiagnosed pain issue that was debilitating and severe, crippling. No matter what we did or where we took her, no one could figure it out. And more than that, it was just a weird time where no one cared. I mean, she was even seeing a therapist and a psychiatrist because there was such intense depression and anxiety involved, and the fear of the unknown, what her life was going to be like, if she was going to have a life. Just trying to find somebody that cared. It was really, really difficult. So we were in a very, very dark place. She had just, when she was about 17, she had just been told by the latest health professional we'd seen that she was going to be in a wheelchair by the time she was 30, and not count on having children if she should get married, because her body would never sustain a pregnancy. And, her bones would probably fall apart. And she was a girl of faith. She had accepted Christ very young, her entire life. And this is what actually made it more difficult for me as a mom. Her entire childhood and life was God, and wanting to serve God, and knowing God, and wanting a future of servitude to God and His will, and evangelism. And she just didn't see that happening, let alone, she's being told by doctors, forget marriage and children and everything else. This one particular night when the storm really hit, she and I were home alone, of course. It was which is funny, a dark and stormy night. The storm was raging outside. It was raining. My husband was gone. My son was gone. Grandma was gone. It was just the two of us. And she had just gotten that diagnosis from a medical professional that day, and just walked into the room and threw herself into my arms. And I couldn't even hold her up. We both hit the floor crying and sobbing, and she's like, "Mom, I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this. I don't want to live like this." And the interesting thing, looking back, she never once asked me why God was doing this to her. That was her faith, versus you'll hear mine in a minute, but that was her faith. She never screamed to God about it. But she said, I can't do this anymore. And she flew out the door and ran and down the street. Now, we live in a pretty secluded area on a big lake. And it literally was a dark and stormy night. I ran out the door, trying to find her, screaming her name. Couldn't find her. Came back in the house and just collapsed in the floor, face down, spread eagle on my beautiful carpet, slobbering, blubbering all over it. And the one hand screaming at God, why are you doing this? I thought you were a God of love. I thought you loved her. And the other hand screaming, help her, do something, save her, rescue her, make this go away. I have no idea how long this went on, but it was pretty intense. I've never cried like that in my entire life. And just sobbing and slobbering and begging God for something. And suddenly I heard a voice. Now, this wasn't an internal voice. I think a lot of Christians feel the nudging of the Holy Spirit when he's encouraging you to do something or say something, go somewhere. This was an external voice. This was someone in the room with me. And the second I heard the first word, I knew this was the voice of God. This voice was so full of passion and authority, but on the other hand, so full of intense compassion and love. I literally stopped slobbering. I sat up, and God said to me, she does not belong to you. She belongs to me. I've lent her to you for a season. Whether that season is long or short is none of your business, Tami. It's my business. I am in the business of your daughter. Give her to me, leave her there, and just relax. And I instantly sat up, and just pounds and pounds of grief and fear and anguish oozed out of my body. Like every pore of my body, this just flooded out and hit the carpet. Literally, I felt 100 pounds lighter. I felt not happy, but I felt incredible joy. And that few seconds, probably, that voice of God just solidified in me I never doubted his existence, I never doubted his love, but it solidified this moment in time, this one relationship of me and him, and my daughter and him, and my daughter and me. He had the authority over, he had the control over, he knew what was happening, and he had a plan. And I instantly was just flooded with the joy that whether she stayed on this earth with me or she left and went to be with him, it didn't matter. Either way, it was perfectly fine. And that she would be definitely in a better, happier place. But if I was left behind on this earth, I would be fine. And my relationship with God would be fine. And at that exact moment, she flew back in the door. She had just been outside trying to cool off and calm down and everything. And I never shared that with her until years later. But from that moment on, my being able to handle the situation totally changed. And I would like to say everything got better and happier, but it didn't. I mean, she had many years ahead of her of anguish, but I was never again in that dark spot. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt God was completely orchestrating this whole thing and was in control. I just never again had that fear. And I knew whether or not she came or went physically from this earth, everything was okay. Everything was fine. And my prayer had been for several years that God allow her, if he was going to take her to be with him, just let her graduate from high school. I just had in my head, I always said it was for her, but I know now looking back it was for me. I needed this goal that she at least on this earth graduated from high school and all her work was not for nothing. And she did. We got her through high school and she graduated with honors. She got through high school that year. During all of this, never any help from the medical profession, nothing. She just kind of sucked it up and took it and went with it. 4 years later, she graduated from college with honors. 2 years after that, she graduated from grad school with honors and got married the next weekend to a young man who, this story, this is a part I tear up about. This young man God brought into her life. They were actually junior high school sweethearts. And there is not another man on this planet that could love her the way he loves her. He has been through the wars with her and her struggle. And he is such a man of faith. And to see how God brought him and his love into her life, because it was many years later before there was any kind of a healing that, the world would see and call a healing. She's been married for almost 8 years now. And the Lord has blessed her with a career in therapy. She is a therapist. She specializes in depression and anxiety and unexplained pain. And she has the most incredible capacity for empathy and can literally say to her clients, I know exactly, I lived through this. I know what you're going through. She worked for a company for 5 years, and now she's out on her own. She has her own business and dozens and dozens of people on her waiting list. And the people that see her don't want to go. They want to stay there because it's so difficult to find whether, it's a counselor, a therapist, a medical person. It really is. It's very difficult to find someone who really understands what you're going through and what it means. The frosting on the cake is this Christmas, our Christmas present was finding out we're going to be grandparents. So she's going to have a baby in a couple months. The preciousness of how God loves us is so, and I said I wasn't going to cry. It's just so overwhelming. And then a few years ago, out of nowhere, the Lord healed her. And she never did get a diagnosis. We never do know what the heck happened. He took the pain away. And just in time for the pregnancy, he took the pain away. God just took the whole thing full circle and he has used every moment of her pain and my suffering. And the storms since then, this was 16 years ago, the storms since then, I have recalled so vividly. I can still hear the sound of that voice, and I can feel the overwhelming presence of God. And the storms I've had since then, none of them have been as catastrophic, but they've been some big ones. And I just remember, my life isn't mine, it's His. My other child isn't mine, he belongs to God. My marriage isn't mine, it's God's. And God is going to do what God's going to do, and it's going to be good and merciful and loving.